Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling. Welcome to another video where today we are covering the Deathwing Terminators, who are the elite of the elite. The Deathwing is the first company of the Dark Angels and their successor chapters, and they tend to field themselves almost exclusively in Terminator armor, except in situations where it would be an active detriment. Though some of their units don't always field it, as they just simply don't wear the armor with the war gear configuration they are. The Deathwing are renowned for their brutal efficiency, their stoicism, and unwillingness to give even an inch of ground to the opponent. They usually appear in a blinding flash of light, teleporting from orbit, and quickly and swiftly delivering ends. The Deathwing have many accolades to their name, many of which are like when a 5-year-long rebellion that had claimed hundreds of Space Marines and thousands, if not millions, of Imperial Guard was shut down by a mere 3 squads of Deathwing Terminators in 1 Terran hour. Truly, they are some of the most fearsome warriors that the Imperium has to offer, second probably in reality only to that of the Adeptus Custodes, really. Let's get into their stats. So the Deathwing's Terminator squad comes in at 185 points, which is 10 points more than standard Terminators. They have the standard Terminator stat line of movement 5 inches, toughness 5, a 2+ save, a 4+ invulnerable save, 3 wounds, leadership 6+, and OC 1. Very standard, but that's not a bad thing in this case, as the Terminator stat line is very resilient to most kinds of firepower. Its invulnerable save giving it a good chance to bounce high strength and AP, and its high toughness and 2+ save making it resilient to small arms. Really, the only thing effective against them is dedicated anti-tank, and again, there's a coin flip as to whether or not that actually goes through. In terms of ranged weapons, they all come standard with a Stormbolter, Ratch's Rapid Fire 2, 24-inch range, 2 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. Very standard anti-light infantry, but is good anti-light infantry, quite good at killing, say, guardsmen. They can take a Heavy Flamer for every 1 in 5, as with any of their heavy weapons. The Heavy Flamer has Torrent, ignores cover, 12-inch range, d6 attacks at auto-hitting, strength 5, AP 1, and damage 1. The Cyclone Missile Launcher gets 2 profiles, Frag, which has Blast at 48-inch range, Attack 2d6, Ballistic Skill 3+, Strength 4, AP 0, and Damage 1. Very solid anti-horde, given its high quantity of attacks, and Blast is always appreciated. The Cyclone Missile Launcher, Crack mode, has 48-inch range, that has 2 attacks, that hits on 3, Strength 9, AP 2, and Damage d6. Nice anti-elite or anti-light vehicle punch. It's very nice to have the flexibility, and you do get to keep your Stormbolter when you take that. Though if I'm being real, I wish you could swap out your Stormbolter for another heavy weapon. I think that would be a very cool change. Games Workshop, make it happen. Then, you can take the Assault Cannon, which has devastating wounds at 24-inch range, 6 attacks that hit on 3s, strength 6, AP 0, and damage 1. About as good as infantry killing as you can get, very effective against guardsmen, orcs, and any other lightly armored and low toughness enemies. Very solid, and the devastating wounds helps it punch up a little bit against enemy armor. Then their exclusive and coolest and most iconic weapon is the Plasma Cannon, as we can see modeled here on the right. The Plasma Cannon has 2 modes, of course. At standard, it's Blast with 36-inch range, D3 attacks that hit on 3s, strength 7, AP 2, and damage 1. So a slight step up in terms of stats, though lower attack count than the Assault Cannon, sort of a middle ground between the Cyclone Missile Launcher and the Assault Cannon. Then you can Overcharge, which adds Hazardous, an extra pip of strength and damage, and AP. But, of course, there's a risk to blow yourself up, but given that Mortal Wounds Hazardous now deals mortal wounds to the bearer, there is more ways to survive it, which is very handy. They all come standard with Power Fists, which are 3 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 8, AP 2, and damage 2. Very solid generalist profile that's good against just about everything in the game, but will slightly struggle to punch up against the toughest vehicles in the game, things like Land Raiders or Knights. The Chain Fist swaps out its accuracy for the anti-vehicle 3+ rule, which makes it excel against vehicles, but struggle more against other things, as it has 3 attacks that hit on 4s, strength 8, AP 2, and damage 2. Very solid, though of course it is less accurate. It depends on what you want your squad to do. If you want them to tango with heavies, bring the Chain Fist. If you want them to be more flexible, bring the Power Fists. Then the Sergeant can, if you want for old school rules, swap out his Power Fist for a Power Weapon, which has 4 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 5, AP 2, and damage 1. Really a profile that's not worth anything unless you're bringing mass amounts of them. I wouldn't recommend bringing that, and I think the Power Fists look cooler, so I don't really see why you would ever bring the Power Weapon. They have 3 abilities. Their Deathwing ability is when this unit makes an attack targeting the Oath of Moment target, you add 1 to the hit roll, which is the standard Terminator rule. But you also get to ignore any or all modifiers to the hit roll, regardless of what you're attacking, which is very useful, especially for things like Chain Fists, which really appreciate not being debuffed, as well as making all of their weapons more accurate. In general, against the Oath of Moment target, they will be super accurate at range and can really pack a punch depending on which detachment you're in. Then, of course, they have the standard Teleport Homer, which is before the game starts, you place the Teleport Homer down somewhere on the map that is greater than 9 inches away from your opponent's deployment zone. And if you want to, you can use Rapid Ingress for 0 CP, but you must drop within 3 inches of the marker, and then the marker is removed. This is mainly useful for mind games, as you can set it up in a location that would be detrimental if your opponent doesn't block, and then that means they either have to hope you're baiting and you aren't going to deep strike there, or they have to delegate resources to screening it out. Regardless, it is a powerful mind game, if not the most practical rule to use. The threat of it is almost more than the power of it itself. Then, of course, they're accompanied by a little Watcher in the Dark, and he allows you to, once per game, gain a 4+ field note gain against mortal wounds, which is useful with the hazardous rules, as they now deal mortal wounds to the bearer and the squad as a whole. Let's get into how I would use them. Oh, where's my mouse? My mouse died. There we go. So the Deathwing, in general, what they do is they pay their points premium as their ability to not be debuffed in terms of hit rolls, which is useful, though they are still susceptible to -1 damage, as most of their damage will be damage 2. Their unique ability to ignore modifiers is, of course, very powerful, but their special weapon is more so middling. The Plasma Cannon is undeniably the coolest weapon they could take, because it's the Plasma Cannon, and he's slinging it one-handed. What more could you want? Though I'd say outside of Inner Circle Task Force, it doesn't really serve a purpose, as both the Cyclone Missile Launcher and the Assault Cannon can fill both of its roles much better, though, of course, there is something to be said in having the flexibility and general purposeness of a big plasma gun. In terms of leaders, they really benefit differently from each of them. If you want to focus more at range, bring a Librarian, as he gives you sustained hits 1. You could bring a Chaplain for consistent +1 to hit, and the Feel No Pain is very useful with the Plasma Cannons, as if you're unaware, Hazardous doesn't just flat out destroy the model now. It deals 3 mortal wounds, which means with the 4+ Feel No Pain, it is unlikely you are going to blow yourself up, which is really useful. And the Captain is probably overall the best, giving them reroll charges so they can get to melee faster, as well as the fact that they get free stratagems, which in the Inner Circle Task Force, which is really the only detachment I'd use them in, is very good, as you can get a reroll wounds, emergency mortal wounds, and a reactive -1 to wound. As I mentioned, I'd really think these guys are only worth it in the Inner Circle Task Force because their Plasma Cannon, which is sort of their unique weapon, really loves the +1 to wound, bringing it from a jack-of-all-trades, master of none, to a really effective anti-infantry and light vehicle weapon that can punch up really well, as anything higher than its strength, he'll be wounding on a 4+, so long as it's on a Avowed objective, which isn't hard to do, as you'll pretty much always be attacking things that aren't on objectives you control. They also really love all of the enhancements. Turn 1 Deep Strike is very interesting. I think they really appreciate the 6-inch Consolidate you can get. And overall, I'd say those are very useful. And as I mentioned, the stratagems are really, really good. I'd say that bringing a squad of these guys, maybe a big squad with a captain, it would be a very wise choice, as it could be something to stomp up the board very quickly. You could swap the captain out for a chaplain if you prefer, to have something a little bit more focused on durability. And if you really wanted to make these guys objective holding and taking monsters, you could bring a captain and an ancient. The ancient would add in a slightly improved melee weapon and +1 OC, with also some other buffs like +1 to wound, which could be useful when not, or +1 to hit, which could be useful when not attacking the Oath of Moment target, which is when they get their +1 to hit. Overall, I'd say that's more so something that you would bring in more so casual games, as I don't think the Ancient is the most useful, but he would allow you to get 2 enhancements in a squad. Fortunately, you can't bring him alongside the Chaplain or the Librarian, which is definitely unfortunate. Anyways, I think these guys are very solid and worth the upgrade if you're playing Inner Circle Task Force. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time when I am live from inside a bottle of plastic glue.